My best friend and I are quarantining at our apartment together. She's trans and has had trouble growing her hair out, so she wears wigs. She has some really cute ones in other colors that she wears for fun and stuff. But she has a standard everyday wig she wears most of the time. Lola never got the traditional girly childhood, so we've been making one for her in quarantine. We built a fort in the living room, have been making friendship bracelets, playing summer camp-style games. It's a lot of fun. Last week, Lola mentioned to me that she wanted to start a quarantine diary so that she could document her experiences for future generations. I actually thought it was really cool, and then we got on the topic of journaling and I told her about my first diary. One of those flismy lock diaries that every girl had as a kid. We bought matching ones as part of our Give Lola Her Childhood Back crusade. They took a little while coming in, but we got them on Friday. Saturday night, some of our friends from college decided to do an impromptu girls' night in. Lola was in the shower, so I answered the Zoom without her. Lola is not out to anybody at our college and I respect that. This is her fresh start and she has a right to decide when she wants to come out to these people, if at all. I know I wouldn't 100% trust some of the people at our school with something as personal as this. We were talking about what we've been doing in quarantine and I mentioned that we had gotten the diaries. I said it was for the nostalgia and they wanted to see the diaries. We left the box in Lola's room, so I went in to show them. Lola and I go into each other's rooms all the time, we're basically sisters to one another, and it's just about second nature. When we were younger, we had keys to each other's houses. I didn't think anything of it. I flipped the camera to show the diaries and didn't flip it back. I got distracted by a cute choker on her dresser and forgot that the camera was flipped back / there was anything to hide. They knew Lola has worn wigs out to parties / the club / etc., but her everyday wig was right out in plain view, and one of our nosier friends asked what the new wig was. I completely blue-screened and someone else realized that it was Lola's hair. I genuinely had nothing to say. They were asking why Lola wore a wig and I had no explanation. I didn't want to out her. Someone else came to the conclusion that Lola must have cancer or alopecia or some other horrible thing that causes hair loss. They've decided that she was just too embarrassed to say, and they all started going on about poor Lola, etc. I just didn't know what to say and I said it wasn't my place to confirm / deny. I hung up and immediately told Lola. I apologized profusely, and I know how badly I I feel so guilty about it. But, understandably, she's upset. Now, she's being forced to decide whether or not to out herself. Lola, understandably, doesn't want to lie about having some serious disease and people are already trying to show support. At the same time, though, she doesn't want to have to come out. I don't know what to do. I want to support her, but she doesn't want to even see me right now. My boyfriend and I have been together over a year and living together about 6 months. He's an extremely light sleeper. We never used to have problems, but I'm now on medicine that causes me to have more insomnia, so it's harder for me to fall asleep. Lately, we've gotten into fights because he's being absolutely unrealistic about any noise in general. I can't clear my throat quietly, sneeze or even yawn without him grumbling, groaning, or yelling at me at how loud I'm being. When I say yawn, I don't mean some exaggerated TV yawn, but literally the sound of me silently taking in and expelling air from my mouth 3-4x over the course of 2 hours sets him off. Sneezing is very rare and it's also quiet, but if I have to make any noise, I do it as silently as possible. But it's not enough for him. When I was extremely sick with the cold, he made me sleep on the couch because I was having a tough time sleeping without being able to actually blow my nose to breathe. But, when he caught it a week later, I gladly let him sleep in the bed and helped take care of him when he woke up in the night because he wasn't feeling well. I've argued with him multiple times that it's unfair for him to expect absolute silence and be mad over the air he hears from a yawn, but he just shuts me down and tells me to be quiet because I've disturbed him from being right on the edge of sleep. I understand that when you're half asleep you're particularly grumpy, we've all been there. But it winds me all the way up that I already constantly have to cater to the way he needs tons of space. Meaning I have to sleep pencil straight all night or on the side not facing him if I want to move my legs at all. And then this sound thing. I've had previous BFs who were heavy sleepers that snored, made lots of noise, and honestly that bothered me less than constantly having to be alert to his needs. He says that earplugs don't work and he only likes to hear the fan, so white noise is out of the question. I don't want to go downstairs because then I'll just stay up, and I don't want to keep taking melatonin every night, but I'm this close to not renewing our lease together next year if things don't change. It also makes me feel like if we got married and had kids, he'd just expect me to be up all the time dealing with the baby, so he can sleep, or complaining about his sleep, or if one of us was to have a chronic sickness that we'd have to sleep in different bedrooms, because of how selfish he is. My husband Derek and I have been married for 3 years, together for 7 total. Several years ago, about 6 now, I guess, I worked closely with a male coworker, Paul, that Derek was never fond of. Paul and I never had an inappropriate relationship. Derek's jealousy wasn't completely out of nowhere. I get why he felt that way. Those couple years were a perfect storm of relationship stress. I was working long hours. We were living apart after trying and failing to move in together. Our relationship was still fairly new. And then you add in a handsome coworker I had to spend long hours with and saw more than my boyfriend at the time. Paul was the source of several fights. Again, we never did anything that wasn't completely kosher. Eventually I told Derek he needed to trust me and get over it, or we were going to have to break up. He said he would stop worrying, and for the most part things were good. When Paul transferred out of state a few months later, things were really good. There were no worries at all, and our relationship has been amazingly strong ever since. This last weekend, my husband went out with a couple friends to some bars and a football game. When he came home, he was pretty wasted. We talked for a bit, and he mentioned how a friend of his had told him that he broke up with his girlfriend because she cheated on him. I commented on how that was a bummer and good for him for finding out before they got too serious. Derek, however, had a different take on it. He said it was a shame because they had seemed like a good couple, and if they really loved each other, his friend could move past the cheating. Just like he had with me. At first I thought my husband was admitting to cheating on me, and asked him what he meant. He told me he always knew that Paul and I had slept together at least once all those years ago. But he knew I was the one for him and forgave me. I told Derek that I had never so much as even hugged Paul, except maybe at his going away party, let alone slept with him. Derek sort of just patted me on the arm, said of course, and passed out. The next morning I asked him about the conversation and he said it was okay, he had forgiven me, it wasn't even an issue. I again stressed that I had never cheated on him with anybody and I needed him to believe me. He sort of did the same, of course you didn't, babe wink thing again, and went to work. Every time I've tried to talk to him since, he won't hear me out. I'm this close to losing it with him. I need him to know that I never cheated, and I'm hurt that he thinks I would do something like that. What do I do? Do I just let him have this since it's not really hurting anything, or what? I don't want my own husband to think so little of me that he thinks I would cheat. That's not who I am. My husband and I, both in our early 30s, have been together for over a decade and made the decision to not have kids. I like kids, I have nieces and nephews, we just don't want them for our own reasons. He had a vasectomy, which only a few people know about. Our families are aware we don't want kids as they've asked this before during different major life events, our wedding for instance. We recently bought a 3-bedroom home with a nice yard in a nice area. Excited to show our new home to family and friends, major upgrade to our previous home, we hosted a housewarming. During the party, one of my sibling-in-laws, Alex, made a few indirect comments about all this space. And kids would love it in our house, etc. Eventually they asked point blank when we were having kids. I made a light-hearted joke about it, which is my go-to for this question. Oh, well, I like sushi too much to have to give it up for a pregnancy. Plus not drinking for pregnancy and breastfeeding? No thanks. I tried to make it very light-hearted and laugh it off. Most people just laughed along. That seemed to anger Alex, and I was told children are a joy, and a good mother puts her kids before everything else. I agreed, children are a joy, I like spending time with the nieces and nephews. And obviously I can't be a good mom if I chose sushi over kids, so I just won't be a mom, paraphrased. Still trying to brush it off in a gentle way because I'm not trying to start a fight by telling them to stop asking in front of everyone, because I know my tone will be seen as rude and abrasive. We move on. But Alex is still annoyed and making little comments in their group about how flippant I am about it and how when it finally happens, then I'll understand. My husband heard this and jokingly said, well, if she gets pregnant, that'll be a problem for the divorce lawyers. That seemed to piss them off more, but they stopped. With holidays coming up, we have not been invited to Alex's usual Halloween bonfire. When husband spoke to his parents, they told him Alex was annoyed we were so careless and callous about our child-free status and to say what we did, and they realized we had taken permanent steps to ensure we never had kids. That we know they had to do if to have kids, etc. And we are AHs to just not care. I feel bad because they did do if and lots of fertility treatments to have their kids. And even then they still had a few miscarriages. I can't imagine wanting kids and struggling to have them and then deal with miscarriages. But at the same time, I'm so tired of justifying living my life how I want. I feel terrible my joke was taken the way it was and that I hurt my IELTS. I truly never meant for that to happen. After the bonfire this weekend, we will be reaching out to have a heart-to-heart, if they'll accept it. Either way, I'll be apologizing for hurting their feelings, let them know I love their kids and them. But I will also be firmly putting down any further attempts to discuss our child-free status, if the conversation is about changing our minds. I have not told them our reasons for being child-free, so I think perhaps if they are willing to listen, I'll explain them and hopefully the conversation can be constructive.